for those who have cancer and who are looking for success in this field, they at least can have the assurance that everything that can be done by government, everything that can be done by voluntary agencies in this great, powerful, rich country now will be done. And that will give some hope, and we hope those hopes will not be disappointed.
President Richard Nixon preparing to sign the National Cancer Act of 1971, the beginning of our government's war on cancer. Now, governmental and health organizations got together back then with the goal of eradicating one of the deadliest diseases facing not only our nation, but the world. Nearly half a century later, that goal still remains elusive, but great progress has been made in combating cancer. And one of those involved in that fight is Dr. Vincent DeVita. He joins me here on the anchor desk, the former director of the National Cancer Institute and the former president of the American Cancer Society. He's currently the Amy and Joseph Perella Professor of Medicine at the Yale Cancer Center. And Dr. DeVita is the co-author of many textbooks on cancer treatment, but he's here tonight to talk about his latest book, The Death of Cancer. After 50 years on the front lines of medicine, a pioneering oncologist reveals why the war on cancer is winnable and how we can get there. Doc, it's good to have you here on Newsmax Prime. You outline it. You say we can win the war on cancer. How close are we?
Well, I think most people don't realize that a good number of cancers are already curable. The mortality rates in this country are dropping from cancer, have been since 1990. So a lot of people are cured, but you don't hear about those. You hear about the people who don't survive. And we've now, you can't pick up a newspaper or a journal without seeing all kinds of stories about the new breakthroughs in immunotherapy. We finally have figured out a way of harnessing the immune system to control cancer. So I think we're on the verge of converting cancer into two types of cancer, those that are curable and those that we convert to a chronic disease, where people live with it in a perfectly normal lifespan. We already have a good example of that with a form of leukemia. So it's a very exciting time, and I think we're going to see the mortality rates, which are accelerating, decline even faster. So.
Well, that's very promising, and forgive me for kind of a stark question as a layman, but let's just say we found a complete cure for cancer tomorrow. How long would it take, given the current regulatory structure, before it might be available to patients?
Well, of course, when you find new things, you're not aware that they are a cure. So there's always this question of whether they should accelerate the development. But it's a regulatory morass now. In fact, there was one study done some time ago, a few years ago, that showed that from the time you get an idea, you write a protocol, and you get it in action, it takes 800 days. 800 days. That's, an extraordinarily long period of time for ideas. New ideas come up. So we need, if we are to follow President Obama and Vice President Biden's advice and have a moonshot, we need not only money, but we need to reorganize the system so that we can be more flexible than we are now. It'll take a long time.
You talked about our current president and our vice president talking about the moonshot approach. Now, back when we used to do moonshots, there's President Nixon preparing to sign the bill 45 years ago, back to 1971, and there's this curious kind of tug of war. On one hand, we welcome governmental resources, and yet with the growth of the regulatory state, scientific method and scientific protocols are one thing. But in the realm of the FDA and government regulation, some would say over-regulation, are there things that can be cut right now that could accelerate even with a strenuous scientific process?
Yes, the FDA is regulating drugs in the last century. They need to come into this century. We need, for example, to approve drugs not only based on their safety, but based on their ability to hit an important target. Right now they're using survival comparative studies that take years and years to do. They also need to delegate the responsibility for these early trials, the way the discoveries are made, to the cancer centers around the country. I criticize cancer centers in the book, but they've come a long way and they're ready to do this. That's what they were set up for. So unfortunately, government agencies, my old place, not excluded, the Cancer Institute, don't, as you know, as a congressman, don't give up power very easily. So it's going to take some doing, probably from the Congress, to get them to change how they handle it.
So in the ultimate oxymoron, political science, what we really need to develop is a vaccine against creeping bureaucracy and over control.
Yes, unfortunately that's true.
If you mentioned earlier some cancers we've already cured, if you were just taking a look right now, what's next on the horizon? Is there one major form of cancer that we're very close to unlocking right here? 30 seconds.
I think the one that strikes me is melanoma, the malignant mole. When you had metastases from that tumor 5 years ago, you didn't survive. Now you're seeing people live years, very long periods of time, free of disease, because of the new immunotherapy. That's a tumor that's going to topple very soon.
And on that hopeful note, Dr. Vincent DeVita, we thank you so much for your time. The name of the book again, The Death of Cancer. There's more when we continue here on Newsmax Prime, so stay with us.